Are you going back to Kansas City tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go and call the meeting to order. Can I get everyone to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get roll call, Russ?
Brandon Earl.
Here.
Andrea Kreifels.
Here.
Sarah Lawrence. Jason Newberry.
Here.
Jessica Seeliger.
Here.
Robert White.
Here.
Pat Zika.
Okay, next up, adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve the agendas presented.
Okay, got a motion, can I get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recognition of patrons and staff.
Nobody but Steve.
Okay, first discussion item, the education spotlight.
Yes, I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Thank you for packing in here. We have a lot of parents and students here to support the board tonight. And we have our amazing middle school science teachers here to showcase their students this evening. So I'm going to give it over to them and so we can hear all the great things they did at the recent science fair.
Hi. I'm Aubrey Rotes. I'm 8th grade science.
This is Spike, 6th grade.
And Cindy Tracy, 7th grade. We had a really good science fair this year. We had approximately 90 projects at our local fair in 16 categories. We had 11 judges, which was excellent and really helped out. A couple of them are in this room. We got everything kind of judged during the school day, and then it had an open house from 5 to 6. And I think we had approximately 200 people show up for the open house. It was a huge deal. I did not sleep that night. Regionals. So we are planning on going to regionals after this. We took all of our first place members. We took first, second, and third from a couple categories since we had so many people in those categories. And we took a couple of second places as well because they scored high enough. We are taking 29 kids, which equals 21 projects. It's going to be at the Exploration Place on February 21st. It's during school day. So they get to miss school, which is kind of a thing. And then if they do well at regionals, they will be able to go on to state, which is also in Wichita, which takes place March 7th and 8th. So hopefully we do well and we make it. There's multiple cash prizes and swag and, scholarship opportunities at the state level, regional level. I don't know so much about this regionals, but it'll be good. So we have a few projects that we want to show. How do we want to do this?
Start off 6.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Oh, no. Right. Get it right back here, ladies. I'll let you go.
So our project was to figure out where there are different types of ways to take medicines. We thought that there are different ways to take medicines because they all need to go to different places. Our hypothesis. There's injections, topical, and oral. And all of them go to different places. Oral drugs are taken by pill and they go to your stomach. Injections go to your bloodstream, and topical drugs are creams and put on your skin. Our project was showing insulin. It needs to be injected into your bloodstream rather than taken by a pill or cream. If you take it by a pill, it'll go to your stomach and it won't help with what it needs to. But when you put it into your bloodstream, then it'll absorb and actually help. When we put the insulin into the stomach acid for 5 minutes, it started to dissolve and not like in the same shape. And when we put it into the bloodstream for 5 minutes, it started turning red. And it's supposed to absorb very fast. Insulin is to help. And our conclusion was that the insulin melted into the stomach acid, and it represents the insulin not being where it needs to. But when it went to the bloodstream, it helped.
All right. You set those up here.
Okay, so my project is called hot ice. So hot ice is a chemical reaction. Well, it's a liquid, and when interacted with, it causes a chemical reaction that makes it all turn into crystals. So you use vinegar and baking soda or the ingredients of hot ice. You normally will use 6 tablespoons of baking soda and 2 liters of white vinegar. And after that, you will mix it. Then you will boil it for about 30 minutes to an hour. And after that, you'll collect the little crystals on the side. Then you let cool at room temperature for about an hour. Then you put in the refrigerator for about an hour to 2 hours. And after that, you take it out. You take the jar out, and then you got hot ice. My hypothesis is that the object put inside will freeze to ice. Hot ice seems to freeze most stuff in its path, which kind of does. I think it would take about 10 to 20 seconds to freeze, which it took about that long for the chemical reaction to start. So process. Test 1, which was this jar. Solution was overheated and instantly turned into crystals. Test 2, which was this one. Solution was not heated enough and was reheated and turned into a solid solely after opening the mason jar seal due to pressure change, resulting in one whole solid that went from chilled to very hot. Test 3, which was this one. Solution was a success. When touched, it started the crystallization process and soon was all crystal. The reaction had made the jar very hot, resulting from the reaction. So this jar right here is filled about here, but after a couple weeks, the crystals would start growing up the side, which was pretty weird. And yeah, it started producing a little bit of liquid inside the crystals. Conclusion: the reaction made crystals that were sturdy and hot after the first interaction. It seems to be very sensitive to objects when touched. The reaction has different responses based on what you previously did to it. So my sources were YouTube and Google. And that's pretty much all. Thank you for listening to me.
Actually, I recorded it. Just kidding.
So the purpose was of our project was to see how different genders will respond whenever they are put to the test on anger.
Our hypothesis was that if we test both girls and boys on frustration, that boys will respond more aggressively.
Our observations, we found out that boys tended to talk with more slang than girls did. They also would talk to themselves. They wouldn't admit that it could have been their fault it was happening, and they blamed the other things. They had more movements and hand gestures. They threw the paper clips down at the table. They were way louder than the girls were, and they made statements like, "It does not work."
Girls, they made facial expressions. They liked to throw the paper clips down as a joke. They tended to mumble a lot. They laugh a lot because they are less competitive and lose anger quicker and move on. They handle anger a bit more rationally, and ask questions like, why does it not work? The conclusion of this, we concluded that boys tend to be louder than girls. Also, boys tend to be a bit more direct with their words, while girls tend to mumble. Boys also tend to use hand gestures, and girls make faces. Due to this information, we concluded that boys do become more aggressive than girls when they are angry.
We took some photos of our project. The first photo is the view of the electromagnet from the standpoint of the scientists where me and Georgia were standing. The second photo is what the electromagnet looked like from where the test subjects are, and the paper clips just stick to the nails. This is the view of the project when you enter the room, and then we also have a better look of what the electromagnet, all the wires looked like.
Build an electromagnet in order to do the testing, and that was fun. It was great fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they did well. So that's what we have. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Who's the thing that's on me? Frank? Who's my teeth over there?
It's Russ's.
That works.
Okay,
Usually is.
I'll take it. Yeah, usually.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Next up, facility rental fee waiver request.
Yes, Silas Scott is here this evening. He is, last year they had a youth wrestling tournament and came and made a similar request, and he is here again this evening to discuss a request with the board. Come on up. And I did give them your original thing as well. So.
Okay. All right. So then I don't necessarily need to go over my notes so much. Just kind of touch on the highlights. We have about 50 kids out again. We had about 50 kids, a little more than that last year. Our clubs continue to grow. In my notes, I did note that we did not make any money. So last year, you guys waiving the fees actually did really help. We had some conflicts of interest with availability of our tournament originally. We had to change the day, and so that kind of made it a little harder for other kids that are already committed to different tournaments, so they had to back out. So that kind of contributed toward that. So I'm kind of in the same spot. Just want to make sure that we have enough funds to do it, and so if we're close on our budget again, you guys waiving the fees for us will help out a lot.
Did we have you pay for the custodian? Is that what we had you?
Yes, so we did pay the $20 an hour, I think is what it was last year.
I'd make a motion to do it the same way we did last year, waive the fee, but still keep the custodial fees in place.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Silas.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Okay, next up, the bond.
Yes, so we continue conversations about bond. We have the whole trifecta here tonight, the bond team here to visit with you, and so I'll let you guys, however you want to go. So appreciate y'all being here.
Yeah. So tonight we have Kelly. I did this last time. You all have names that overlap.
Three first names actually.
Yeah.
So.
We have Clayton here to go over with Piper Sandler over what I had mentioned last time about the bond cap being met, what that means to you guys, and allowing you to ask him the questions of how does a fall vote work versus a spring vote, and any other questions that you might have to be able to bounce those off him, as well as I've asked him to provide what a mill increase looks like for $20 and $25 million bond projects. So when Shelley gets up here to talk about the survey and the survey questions. Last time we had discussed, 14 being 0 mill levy, but also putting it out there to see what is receptive to the community and if there's support for different types. And so he's going to present what that looks like as well. So I will let him get up here, talk to you guys, and we're here to answer any questions that you have. So ask away.
Thanks, Brandon. A lot of this information in this packet you might already be pretty familiar with. Some of it's just kind of updated. Cash flows updated for interest rates, and then some of that historical information maybe updated for new budget figures since the last time you've seen it. So Clayton Kelly with Piper Sandler, financial advisor for the district. You may be more familiar with my colleague Dustin Avey. This is, I think, the first time I've met you guys, so it's great seeing you all. I think maybe the first thing I want to go through before I start getting into this packet is really just what's happening with bond cap. Just an update there, because I think that's really the basis for kind of a reshifting of potential election dates and what you're looking at. So essentially, when you go to call a bond election, if you receive state aid or if you're exceeding 14% of your assessed valuation, which includes your outstanding debt, you have to go through and get approval from the state board. And several years ago, the state essentially put a limit on the amount of bonds in aggregate between all school districts in the state that could be approved in any 1 year. We've never actually hit that before. This is the first year that we're hitting that, and it's called the bond cap. It's currently set at about $590 million. So once in one fiscal year, once applications that have been in have exceeded that number, essentially you're kicked out until there's a failed election, which allows for cap to be available, or just you're pushed to next fiscal year because it resets every single year. And so essentially with the elections of like Kansas City, Kansas took up about 180 million or 175 million of that cap earlier this year. Wichita surprisingly didn't take up a whole lot of the cap just because they have such a high assessed valuation that only the amount that exceeded 14% of their assessed valuation counted against the cap. But since that time, we've had Hayesville call an election, Goddard call an election, Mulvane, Hutchinson. So there's been several large bond elections called that are taking up significant portions of the cap. And so really at the December board meetings was really the last opportunity to get in before you could be subject to that cap limit. By far the earliest, as I said, this hasn't happened before. It happened much earlier than a lot of people expected. So what does that mean for you as a district? It essentially means that you still have the ability to call election at any point. If you say, hey, we're ready to call election, let's just go ahead and take the board action to move forward to call the election, you can do that at any time. But you will not be able to actually hold an election until next fiscal year. So essentially, first date that becomes available is early August if you have an August primary. If you don't have an August primary, then it's really a conversation with your county clerk of how soon after that date, that August primary date, would they be comfortable conducting an election for your district. Typically, we see it a couple of weeks after that date is pretty doable for most county clerks. So you're really looking at middle of August through about that first to second week in September as one time period. And then due to essential blackout dates, you're not able to conduct an election within 60 days of a general election. So your only other time through the end of the calendar year that you have available to conduct election would be at your general November election. So you kind of have that 30-day period in August, September, general election in November, and then starting as soon as mid-January of 2026, you would be available to have, essentially have the availability to conduct an election from mid-January of 26 through mid-June of 2026. So the spring, there's a lot more availability compared to the fall just because of blackout dates and how election law is conducted. So with that said, it might not actually be better to just, I'll come back to some of these other portions of this packet, but tab 4 has 2 election dates and how that looks, and then we can get back to the cash flows that Miranda had discussed. August, we have one for August 2025 and then November of 2025. And so essentially, as you're thinking about election dates, if you are ready to go in August, then as I mentioned earlier, you could call the election at any time, but you have up until essentially your May Board of Education meeting to do so if you're wanting to go in August. So you really need about a 3-month head start from that election date. And again, that just, as you look through kind of the process in this calendar, you can see that that includes application to state board, election documents sent to county clerk. We have to do the district will have to do some publishing of notices, which will help you with, each of these steps will really help you with. It's just kind of part of the standard process of calling an election. So May 1st would be, or essentially before your May board meeting on May 12th is when you would need to have everything in place. And when I say everything in place, bond election amount, type of election, scope of project, plan of finance, so a financing term, all of those would need to be finalized going into your May board meeting so that you can essentially, we can gather all that information, put together the ballot question, so that really all you're doing at your regular May board meeting is authorizing through a bond resolution, through authorizing a resolution to call your bond election. So the second page after that is a November election, so very similar timeline. You can see everything kind of needs to be conducted at no later than 3 months in advance of that November general election date. Some things to think about is we're showing August 12th on the first timetable for that. We'll really need to coordinate and talk with the county clerk and make sure that that is an option, just if you do have, whether or not you have a primary, thinking about what makes sense there. For the August or September election, you have the ability to do a mail ballot. You do not have that option with the general November election. It would have to be walk-in, so that's something to consider. In addition, revenue neutral rate notices. So it may be worthwhile to see when those went out last year or in prior years. Typically, we see that middle to end of August. We've seen in some of these late August, early September elections, when patrons get their revenue neutral rate notice right before going into an election, it doesn't always pan out so well. So just some things to be aware of in terms of that timing. Other considerations, cost. So with a special election, there will be some costs associated with that. Typically what we've seen, the county clerk can provide the exact cost or the estimated cost. Typically it's $1 to $2 for a walk-in. If you're doing a special election per registered voter, if you're doing a mail-in, it's typically $3 to $4 per registered voter for a mail-in. So about double the price to do a mail-in versus a walk-in. And then obviously your general election is essentially free. There's no added cost for that special election.
But if we have a primary, that would
Yep,
likely be
there's
August,
another
so
opportunity.
it would be free.
Yep, exactly right. So just some things to think about on election date options. We don't anticipate bond cap being an issue that early in the year. I mean, December is when it really became an issue for this past fiscal year. There was just significant amount of elections that seem to have got delayed as a result of COVID, and they all seem to really come forward this year, getting comfortable to come forward this year. So we don't really anticipate that being a problem. And honestly, both of these timelines, typically you're calling your election at the latest by August. So a lot of that, the fiscal year reset, should be plenty of cap available. The only issue I can see is if you have a lot of districts that start now worrying about the cap, pushing their project forward than what they typically would. And as I mentioned earlier, you can call your election at any time. So even if you were planning to have a November of 2025 election, you could call it today. You may get a lot of districts speeding that process up just so that they make sure they don't get subject to that cap for the next fiscal year. So that's something to consider as well. Again, I don't think it'll be an issue for you guys, but just something to be aware of. Going back to the cash flow, I guess I'll pause there for a second, just as it relates to election dates, bond cap, kind of what that looks like coming this fall. You guys have any questions on that? Okay. Going back to probably tab 2, be a good place to start. Actually, let's start with tab 1. So, tab 1 has just an updated interest rate chart. Really, over the last 35 years, there you can see kind of where interest rates have been. Yes, we're off our all-time lows from a few years ago, but historically, rates are still below where they've been over the past 35 years. So, still a really good time to finance a project. Again, we'll harp on it, construction costs. So construction inflation, especially over the last few years, is what we've seen significantly higher than any potential interest rate. So the cost of waiting to do a project just increases. And in addition to that, with a bond financing, you're locking in that rate for the entire term. So if rates do drop lower after you go in and lock in that rate, you can always refinance. So we get a lot of questions around market timing. When's a good time to go and lock in interest rates? If the market's really volatile when we're going to lock in interest rates, we may get a little bit more diligent about a strategy around potentially waiting to see if they rebound a little bit. But in terms of just the mechanics of our overall financing, because you have that ability to refinance, we don't really get too concerned or try to predict where the market's going, just because you really have no idea. Somebody that tells you that they do have an idea of where rates are going to go in the short term, I'd like to hear their accuracy over their history. So it's pretty much unknown. The next couple of pages are really key information that will go into cash flows that you'll see on this next tab. Assess valuation, which is essentially tax base. So when we think about how are we going to pay for this bond issue, the debt service payments on this bond issue, it's really pulled from the assessed valuation or the tax base of your district. We calculate that and we talk about it in mills, and when we start talking about a mill levy, essentially all that is a calculation of how many dollars is it going to take to make your payment on your debt service. And those dollars are pulled from your tax base, which is your assessed valuation. So you can get an idea of what has happened with your assessed valuation with this chart or with this page over the last 10 years, 5 years, and 3 years. Fairly modest growth, but you can see what's happened over the last 3 years. Over 4% growth per year in your assessed valuation. And when we think about a financial plan, over 20, 25, 30 years, we don't like to get too aggressive on what those assumptions are. We don't want to put you in a situation where you're communicating no mill levy increase bond issue or a certain mill levy increase bond issue. And then we used really aggressive assumptions. We thought that, it's been, almost 3% over the last 5 years. It's going to be 3% over the next 20. And then we hit a recession, or we hit, at some point your assessed valuation doesn't grow quite that robustly, and now you're stuck with having to increase your mill levy. So we're using 1.5% in our analysis. Happy to adjust that as well if you guys feel like you want to be more conservative or more aggressive on that. It's just typically we're in that anywhere from 2.5% to 0% range when we start looking at some of these for other districts. So just a frame of reference on kind of where you guys stand in our analysis. State aid, so just for reference purposes, the next 3 columns to the right of that show state aid based on when you conducted a bond election. For any bonds issued prior to 2015, for any bond elections prior to 2015, the district currently receives about 77% state aid. So 77% of your payment on, for example, on your current outstanding debt, because you had that election was related prior to 2015 date, 77% of that's paid by the state. State law made a change, similar time frame to when they put in the bond cap, a couple of years before that, to where they essentially changed the formula for how state aid is calculated. That essentially changed. It resulted, if you can look at what the change was back when they made it in 2015, your state aid on bond issues went from 51% down to 34%, and you can see what's happened since. Since that time period, as I mentioned today, and again, this gets recalculated annually based on assessed valuation per pupil, so there's a little bit of a math component that goes into that, but 77% is what you're currently receiving. If you had an election between 2015 and now, you're in that 21% range. So a massive difference just by that change in the formula and how they're calculating state aid for your district. We've been kind of harping on trying to get them to change the formula. They made a slight change in 2022, but as you can kind of see with where your rates are with that, not a lot changed. Essentially how it was calculated prior to that 2015 change, it was more based on a median value. So there was like a 25% median value within the district. They essentially changed that to make it the whole calculation based on Fort Leavenworth schools. So Fort Leavenworth schools in 2015 became the basis of how they're calculating state aid. Fort Leavenworth schools, military base, never needs to do a bond election project, never needs state aid. So you can see, and your guys is almost a prime example of what has changed over the last 10 years since they've made that in potential state aid for your district. So we're trying to get it back towards like a median or a quadrant 25% base formula rather than basing it on one school district that's never going to receive state aid. Or sorry, that's never going to actually utilize state aid through a bond issue. So the next page, mill levy history. Really on this page, that far right tab is that total district levy. So that's what patrons are going to see when you talk about what the district levies for you as an individual. You can see that really since 2013, 2014, it was as high as 63.4 mils. Since that time, it's dropped over 13 mils to 50.266. Kind of getting into a little bit more detail from the far left side, you have your general fund, which is always set. Every single school district in the state of Kansas is set at 20 mils. Your local option budget, Adam, I don't know if you know what percent you guys are levying there. If you're taking the full 33% or somewhere between the statewide average.
I think it's 31.
31%.
Yep.
So then that's kind of recalculated based on supplemental foundation aid. And then capital outlay, you're capped at 8 mils there. So you've been pretty close to taking full advantage of that since 2015. And again, there's a massive state aid that you guys receive as part of that payment. So it's really good that you're taking full advantage of the 8 mils or close to it there. And then you have your little bit more flexible fund, your bond and interest fund. And we'll get into why you have that flexibility moving forward, but that's really the one that's dropped quite a bit over that 10 to 11 year period, compared to where you were back in 2013, 2014. So again, just some things to be thinking about. I think this is a good frame of reference going into any type of election to kind of see what you've done with taxpayer dollars, being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. To be able to say over the last 10 to 11 years, you reduced the total mill levy of the district by over 13 mills. So then going back to tab 2. So the last couple pages have been looking at history, some of the key data that we use, and we put that into these next couple pages when we go to forecast and look at what this is your bond and interest fund. So when we talked about those 4 funds, general, supplemental, capital outlay, it's going to be your bond and interest fund, specifically just used to pay principal and interest each year. So starting on the far left, we have that assessed valuation. So the blue figures just mean historical. We know what those are. So we try to project out what that looks like at 1.5% moving forward through 2034. Series 2015. Again, going back to your previous bond election. And then we did a couple of refinancings for those. And those refinancings get named a new series. So even though it says you have 3 series of bonds, it's technically related to just one bond election, but they have different interest rates. Because we took advantage, if you go back to that interest rate chart, where interest rates dropped back in 2020, 2021, took advantage and refinanced at that time. The column to the right of that is total debt service, so just the annual payment every single year of those 3 bond issues. The amount that the state's paying, again, 77% this year, so a significant portion of that annual payment is paid by the state. You have a motor vehicle revenue, so that's just an additional revenue source outside of what is shown on your assessed valuation to help pay towards the bond. And then finally, you have kind of the last 3 columns here, debt service after any state aid and motor vehicle. That's essentially going to be the debt service annually that the district is responsible paying. And then you come to the 2, in my opinion, the 2 most important columns on this page, fund balance and your total mill levy. So fund balance, it's really good to carry some type of fund balance there. You guys have a very healthy fund balance in this instance. That's really good for mill levy management. So as you've seen in your for those previous pages, the one that fluctuated a lot was that bond and interest fund. It gives you a lot of room to manage your overall mill levy because you don't have any flexibility in your general fund. You want to keep your capital outlay at close to 8 mills. And then you're trying to maximize that 31 or 32% in your supplemental general. So your bond and interest mill levy is the only mill levy you really have available to you to help with managing that overall district levy. Having fund balance, having a significant fund balance in there or a healthy fund balance in there goes a long way to being able to do that. So kudos to you guys for not only being able to lower your mill levy, but also keeping a healthy fund balance in your bond and interest fund. And then finally, to the right of that, you have that mill levy for this specific fund. We're just projecting out 8 mills. If it stays at 8 mills over the next, is that 9 years or so, what that fund balance grows to. So there's going to be a point in time where if you didn't have a future project, you're going to have the ability to either pay off those bonds early if you keep those mills at 8 mills, or the state actually does have an ability for a district, if you don't have any other projects, you're not looking at a bond election, you can actually transfer any balance into your capital outlay fund. Before you're able to do that, when you go through the review process with the state each year, they're going to look at this and they're going to ask you, number 1, do you have any future projects? Number 2, if you don't, your fund balance is growing at such a level that it may make sense to start reducing your mill levy, which you guys have already done in this, but start reducing it even further. So you're going to start at some point getting that pressure as you get closer to that 2034 maturity in these bonded in the existing debt. So the next page shows, again, keeping the assumptions the same, 1.5% growth in your assessed valuation, keeping your mill levy at 8 mills. We talked about having that fund balance. Another big advantage of having that fund balance is a lot of districts, if that fund balance was lower, there's no way you could already be able to take care of some projects through a bond issue and draw down on that fund balance. It would require a mill levy increase. In your guys' instance, you can keep that mill levy at 8 mills, layer in a new bond issue, and in this case, we're showing 14,650,000, financed over 25 years, keep the mill levy at 8 mills, and essentially you can see you're utilizing, so you're drawing down on that fund balance and still keeping it at a very healthy level, but drawing down on it to essentially allow for a no mill levy increase bond issue. And again, kind of going back to my earlier point, another huge advantage of you guys putting yourself in this place is you can take care of your projects now instead of having to wait 5 years and they're 40%, 50% higher in cost. And now you're taking care of them because you've been such good stewards of taxpayer dollars with the fund balance. So
And what was that a number exactly?
14,650,000.
But that puts us in a spot where our fund balance gets in bad shape pretty quick if we don't adjust the mill levy.
So it's a little bit of perspective on fund balance and kind of where we like to see fund balance at any one time. Anytime you're over 15% in fund balance, it's actually really, really healthy, really good. You guys are there still at all times, even with this scenario. It does look significantly lower from where you've been.
That last one down there at 2050, which I know that's a long run out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's getting the fund balance down to 300,000.
Yep, 300,000 and we look at it on an annual payment basis. So when I say 15 to 20% or 10 to 15%, that's as per your annual payment. So that's still going to put you right around 20% or so, a little over 20% on your annual payment. Still a really good place to be. And I'll just emphasize, we're showing 1.5% in this scenario, and we kind of look at what you guys have done historically. Any 0.5%, 1/4% difference in this growth rate makes a massive difference in that fund balance. So we try to be fairly cautious on these assumptions for these projections. These next couple pages, we just increased it about 5 million for each, so exact same scenario, but for 20 million and then for 25 million. Each of these scenarios would require about right around a 2.6 to 2.5 mil increase. So any additional amount above 15 million or above 14.6 million, if you're going 5 million above that, approximately 5 million, it's going to require about a 2.5 mil increase. So with the next page, we show 10 million above that. You can see that's about a 5 mil increase. Again, historically, I always like looking at the historical perspective. I mean, where this mill levy was historically over the last 10 years ranged anywhere from, you guys were all the way up to 18 mils at some point, but I would say anywhere from that 12 mil range down to the 8 mil range. So what does 2.5 mils or 5 mils actually mean in terms of dollars? What's that increase? That's what the next tab 3 shows for the 20 and 25 million dollar scenarios. It'll give you an idea of the annual, monthly, and daily impacts to residential property on the first page, commercial property on the second, and agricultural property on the third. So I didn't exactly go in order there on the packet, but I'll go ahead and pause there if you guys have any questions on kind of just the financial update of things at this point. And in terms of bond financing amount or term, so you have the ability to finance up to 30 years, so we're showing 25 in this scenario. I would say in the current interest rate environment, we're seeing very similar interest rates that you would get on a financing, whether it's 30, 25, or 20 years, even really 15 years. So we're seeing a lot of districts max out and go to that 30-year as an option, just because you have that ability to refinance if rates drop sooner. So the plan that a lot of districts takes is we're trying to maximize either a no mill levy increase or maximize our dollars available without causing an annual per year increase to taxpayers. Knowing that there is additional interest cost associated with that, but the financial plan that we put in place, if we grow at what we expect to grow, not necessarily what our financial plan is, we can pay that off early. So we're not showing the maximum amount in terms of term here. It's the 25-year scenario versus what you could go up to 30 years if you wanted to. Or you could show a shorter term. A shorter term would result in a smaller amount of bonds that you could issue for a no mill levy increase.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You want to go through the surveys? Sure. Questions?
Hello again, and I'm Shelley with DCS, and we'll be working on your survey. And just a few things that I want to share, and then kind of hear what you have to share with me. Survey timeline, since timeline was something that you asked about when we were last together. Really looking at probably 5 to 6 weeks from the time we have the survey in its final form until you have the information back so that you can use it. So definitely we want to get that survey put together as quickly as possible. So really, we can get it done toward the end of March for you. We could really push it and try to get it in time for your March meeting, but there would be some corners that we would have to cut, and I don't really know that you want to do that because survey quality is certainly very important. We want to have adequate time to make sure that it does get mailed out, that it reaches all of your patrons, and we don't have any weird quirks that happen with the postal system that would cause people to not be able to participate in the survey. So really, I think we're looking at trying to get the survey in its final form so that my recommendation would be so that you could approve it at your March meeting, and then, at your February meeting, so that then by your March meeting, I might be able to at least kind of give you a glimpse of where it was going, and then we could have a special meeting later in March where you would have the printed version and could really spend time going over all of the results in great detail. I know Adam and I have talked about the working group and when that.
And I did send the board the examples that you sent me so they could see all that. And then Shelley and I scheduled some time for next week. And so tonight you'll be discussing committees and if you want to, how you want to do that this year, since we're having bond talk. You know, traditionally we've had a facilities committee. And they've done some of the bond stuff, but now that we're getting heavy into it, whether you want a separate bond committee to do some of this type of work for surveys, but we did set some time next week so that whenever you make those decisions later today, hopefully that works for whoever you decide to put on that committee to work on some survey work. Depending on how that discussion goes with the board, that's a little bit later this evening, So I wanted you to be able to get those examples as well so that you see what the work they've done with other districts.
And having had a chance to look at the very rough draft of a survey that I sent out, and I believe we shared a completed survey we'd done with another district. Do you have any questions or thoughts that you want to share while we're together tonight? Alright.
Oh, cost. What is the cost of this mail out survey?
We take care of that. That was included in you hiring us as your CMAR. So we are very, very pleased to present this to you as a complimentary service. That's our skin in the game, and it'll be turnkey and we'll take care of everything.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Alright, so what I have to report, I've checked into some of the grants that I have talked to you guys about as potential options. And unfortunately, we worked around trying to figure out a way to get the CDBG, and the grant administrator that I was talking with says that they just couldn't see a way where we could make it work. We did look into the REAP. We cannot get them to answer their phones, but we did a lot of due diligence. And on their eligibility requirements, it's agricultural producers, small businesses, tribal corporations, and must meet Small Business Administration size standards. Again, we were kind of trying to figure out, is there a way to make that gray line work, and we just couldn't with that. But we also have tried calling and emailing over the last 2 months, 3 different people, and I know there's holidays and stuff in there, but we have not had luck on that one. So from, and we haven't heard of we've asked other school districts as well that we have relationships with, and we haven't found another school district that has applied for that. So on my side, not great news on the grant side of things. However, I do have one in-house team member as well as a grant administrator that we do a lot of projects with, both on the lookout when new things come up, if there's anything that would work. On the construction side of things, we have outlined a whole project list of items that meet that 14 million. I think once the survey comes back and we kind of see where the public has support, if you guys decide, hey, there was a lot of support for this 20 mil package, and that's kind of maybe where we want to go, then we will work and put together that overall scope for 20 million. But we have outlined, the wanting to kind of rework at the middle school, the downstairs area art, FFA weight room as a project, as well as the cafeteria storefront as a project that are not necessarily deferred maintenance. So we're going to definitely put those in the forefront of the bond as projects that are getting taken care of, as well as the deferred maintenance. But because your package is so heavy with deferred maintenance, it really will help us once we know this is the amount that we can outline and really dive into. These are the things, because we have some really good numbers from Brett and DCS's team on what a lot of these items cost, and we're easily at 14 million and able to get there. And so we are going to set up an on-site meeting, or we've already had an on-site meeting with the storefront company, and so I'm going to get in contact with them and kind of come up with a concept and work up a visual for you guys for the next meeting to kind of help with that marketing side of things for the bond, since we know that's a very high desired project for this bond. And so we'll work that up and, try to give you a couple options. Here's replacing it, just with the cheapest way to do it. And here's a way to add a little, spice to it and kind of give you guys some options on that for the next meeting. But that's kind of where we're at on the cost application side and construction side. Is, really helping with the survey, helping with the marketing materials for that. And then once it comes from that, taking that feedback and moving forward with getting the amount, type, scope, and the financing that Clayton needs for you guys to approve that or call for that election. So that's kind of where we sit on the architecture side of things. Do you guys have any questions for me? All right.
Is there anything we need to be working on the next month besides working on the survey with Shelley?
The survey is the main driver right now that we're all going to be working towards to kind of help get everything going and get that push out there so we can kind of see what that comes back with. And, you know, have that meeting to go ahead and get that information back so we can hopefully, or, you know, maybe get into that August 12th election date if that's what you guys decide you want to do.
Okay. Got it.
All right.
Any other questions for Miranda?
Sounds good.
That's the update.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
There's a general. That's why, sorry.
Thank you. Yep, yep. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. See you, Brett.
Give me a call tomorrow or an email and times and people and all that.
Sounds good.
I'll be
Appreciate
here.
it. Nice place.
So many, it's more than so many.
Okay, next up, CTE class adjustments.
Yes, Renee. Look how patient Renee's been.
Alright, I was tonight, wasn't I?
Renee's here to discuss adjustments to CT programs. So,
Well, hello, everyone. All right, I believe you probably received in the packet, the information about some of the changes that are coming up for CTE. So, as we start preparing for next year, we're kind of right at the point where we're doing what's called pathway maintenance, and Mr. White serves on an advisory committee for us, so he's heard some of this information in November. We knew that there was gonna be changes for the ag area and our audio, visual, communications, IT area, and some changes there too. So really, what I wanted you to know is we've got a lot of name changes that are taking place for this coming school year, fiscal year 26. So with the name changes, that means that we just need to coordinate those efforts with the counselors, not just at the high school, but at the middle school as well, and make sure that the name changes are addressed in Infinite Campus. And with that, there may be a few changes that'll have to happen. Peggy will help us with that. Peggy Gilmore when it comes to mapping of new courses. And so we will definitely have to map out the new pathway, the FAD pathway, the fashion, apparel, interior design one. And we're gonna add a couple of programming classes there. Now, just because we're mapping them doesn't guarantee that we're gonna offer them. I mean, we have to wait and see what student interest is also, but we're trying to just open up as many opportunities as we can and kind of see where that interest will lead us. So that's kind of the first two parts to that. And then as we looked at the ag and did some talking, it was actually Arc City High School reached out to me and asked what we were doing with the changes coming up with ag. And so as we looked at it, currently we have 4 pathways, and one of them is called comprehensive. And so they're continuing that, but of course the name change for all those pathways are going to be different. But as we look closer into it, we can see that every class that's offered in what we currently call comprehensive, which will be the diversified pathway, is the same classes that are in the other 3. And so we're like, there's really not the need to have that if we have it in the other 3. So we're gonna start with the 3 pathways, which basically is plant, animal, and power, the welding side of it. And so those will be the 3 that we're gonna focus on. And we also felt like the advantage to that would allow for the instructors to become a little bit more specialized in a particular area and maybe get a little bit deeper into what it is that we're doing. So that's kind of where we're headed there with the ag pathway. With the arts and AV communications, we had gone from where they had 1 pathway and then they expanded it to 3, and now they're going back to 1 from the state perspective. So we're going to now be offering what's called media design and communications pathway. And as I thought about it a little bit, even over the weekend, I'm like, that means that being able to track that information is going to be a little bit different too. So we're going to be in the process where we just update students and everybody else on kind of how that's going to look. But we'll be moving from 3 then down to 1 with that. So we really just have some course name changes. We're going to add some classes. We're going to go to 3 ag pathways, and we're going to combine 3 into 1 for the arts AV type thing. So, and the changes that are in front of you are all changes that come from the state. It's not something that we want to change anything. It's what they're asking us to do. So we just felt like we probably need to bring that before you and let you know. And so you guys have any questions about that or? Okay, so currently the middle school and the high school are working to update like enrollment guides with all that information in it and everything too, so students have access to that as well, so. Okay, all right. Well, thank
I
you
do
very
have
much.
one question, I guess, I'm sorry.
Okay,
So the fashion design
Yes.
pathway,
Mm-hmm.
is that all set? Do we have the classes for that? Where are we in that?
The classes are being offered this semester.
They are, okay, that's
so
what I
yes,
thought.
yes, they are. Yes, they
Okay.
are.
So we don't need to do anything with
Nope.
that one, that's all.
Nope, those are off and going. But they are, they're not considered funded classes for this year. Anything in the spring isn't, so it's
Okay.
not like we're losing anything from that perspective. But to get them as funded for next year, that's why we need to make sure we get them mapped and added into and get the pathway approved during this maintenance timeframe, so, yeah. Okay,
And those are new for this semester?
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And I
they
don't, and I, that might be something the board would
That's the ones
consider
we had to approve. and
approving on, just because that hadn't been approved before, so that would make it official on that. I know it's
So I
hindsight,
need
but
to make a motion to approve the new fashion pathway?
that'd probably be a good idea.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion, can I get a second?
Second.
Got a second, all those in favor say aye. And opposed, same.
Okay,
There we go.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee. Appreciate it.
Alright, next up, sportsmanship policy.
Yes, so ongoing discussion of sportsmanship policy that we have been talking about for several months, and so Ellie is here this evening to continue that discussion.
Hello. I just kind of went through our discussion points that we had last month, kind of made those changes into that second version that I presented last month. So just to kind of go over the changes, I did take out the coach part of it. I do think that is just this should just be for student athletes, and then the coach part of it is just kind of more on my role and my duty and my job. And then we don't run into kind of some potential HR problems and all that kind of stuff. So it is just student athletes. It was one of the changes I made. I added adding the parents and guardians to the meeting in that third offense. When everybody else kind of gets involved, I added parents to that. And then I added the review section, which is kind of what I was talking about last time, where if there is a situation where it was maybe not something we agree on, and it is kind of, we can go back and review that. We can lessen that if we deem fit. So those are the three changes that I made. Other than that, it stayed the same as what I talked about last month.
Any issues? I mean, besides the one basketball, the girls' basketball coach, any issues since? Or?
Girls basketball coach.
You said the one coaching.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. No, we have not had any. I think this kind of keeps our kids in check. I think I've seen some growth in that area in our athletes where maybe we've struggled before. But I think they all know that it's out there, and they know that there is an overall consequence, and they're not just kind of depending on their coach at the time. And so I do like that part of it. I think it holds them accountable. I think they know if something does happen that there is a meeting that has to happen. So I do like that, but we haven't had any other than that one, no.
Is this still immediate removal from the game, or this is for
This-
the next game?
This would be the next game. So this allows the coach to kind of still have their voice, have their opinion on their program. So the immediate removal does not happen. The coach then makes that decision to sit them. They then get to know their players, and if they feel like, hey, this kid has really kind of calmed down, they get to go back into the game and kind of finish things out, and then we have that meeting regardless. And so it kind of gives that coach that feel on their program for sure. And if they feel like, hey, this kid hasn't calmed down, then they sit. But that's on the coach at that point. So kind of gives them that feel. Maybe not the right word, but yeah.
Any questions?
So who's on the coach to make sure that's
That would be my role. That would be, I feel like that's my job. I feel like that's where I would come into play, and if they're not doing what my expectation is, and then that's where I would have that conversation with the coach, for sure. And I kind of follow this tiered system anyway, in my own doings, in meetings and all that kind of stuff. So
I mean, my take on it is I think we should be holding our coaches to the highest standard.
Yeah.
I think they should be setting the example for the rest of the kids instead of setting the example of what not to do, which we've had those instances.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I understand your comment about pulling the coach piece out because of the HR side of it. Totally get that. But I still think, I don't know, still
That's where I meant to.
on the fence a little bit on
yeah,
the nothing in there.
yeah, and I can see that. I think
At the
that's
same time, I do trust you to do the
and
right
that's
thing.
what I was just
And
gonna say.
we have
I
the right
think
person in the position. I did speak to an official today, just ask their opinion. I guess this is where I teeter on the whole thing, and think maybe we shouldn't have coaches in there. He was worried about officials that have had an axe to grind in the past and now see an opportunity to do something about it.
yeah, and as a coach,
So as much as, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as much as I would like to see the coaches in there, I do trust Ellie, and I know Ellie's gonna do the right thing, and those words just keep ringing in my head.
thank you. Yeah, but I would agree. I think coaches run into the same officials all the time, and you know, you can have one bad experience with an official, and then all of a sudden that relationship with that particular official is kind of, it's maybe not gone, but it is could be deteriorated, and maybe that's not necessarily, you know, they'd be quick to tee them up, and that may not be the fairest in that situation. But should we be in those situations? No, but I think it also is, that's like I was saying before, I think that's where I come in, and I think that's where I have those conversations with our coaches and, you know, hold them to those standards for sure.
So if a kid does something that's blatant and the coach says, I'm gonna pull him.
Yep.
Right then.
Mhm.
In this policy, it says half game suspension the next contest.
Mhm.
So does, say they do it, midway through the first quarter and coach pulls them.
Yeah.
If coach believes that, does that mean the kid is setting the bench that whole game and half the next?
Yeah, that's the way I see it. I think that's the consequence. And I think then that also, you know, if it is blatant, I think that should be the consequence in that point. And then if it is kind of a situation where it's kind of middle of the road situation, you know, that's where that meeting comes into play, and we can have that discussion of, okay, I feel like you have already sat this half game,
Right,
but you
okay.
you are here on the first step. Please understand that if it happens again, you're on step 2.
That makes sense.
Do we need a motion to update this, or?
Yeah, because this would replace what's in place right now.
I'll make the motion to update the sportsmanship policy as presented.
We got a motion, can I get a second?
I'll second it.
A second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same. Okay, thanks, Ellie.
Awesome,
Thank you,
thank you
Ellie.
guys.
Thank you.
Alright, next up, December policy updates.
Okay, yes, KSB sent out their December policy updates. It was pretty lengthy. And so, no need to, approve that tonight unless you just want to. You can also take some more time to review it, as a board if you choose to. But those are the updates for this year. We did go through, there's quite a few spots in there that needed to be, checked or, filled in the blank, and so we did that based off of how the district operates right now. But obviously, any of those can be adjusted as well if needed. So that is before the board for discussion this evening.
policy committee look at this.
Hmm?
And we need to have the policy committee look at it.
I'm good with that.
We'll have the policy committee just bring back, I guess, next month.
That's fine. Yeah, if you guys assign the policy committee again, then yes, that would be fine. If not, then you can,
Or your people contact my people.
if not, if you don't choose the policy committee later in the meeting, then we will bring it back to you in its whole like this again next month, so.
Anyone have any questions on it? Before we move on?
Good.
All right. Community center interlocal agreement.
Yes, so, been discussing with Mr. Porter, our city manager, about interlocal agreement that would take place for the community center between the city and the district. Some of the things that have been talked about in the past by the board and the city is, and I know that Martin was in here discussing with you, was the laws on having to pay a lump sum for the community center. And so this takes the place of that. This would be an interlocal agreement with the city. And so therefore the city would be agreeing to the board choosing to make payments if you choose to do so. Obviously you can choose to do lump sum, but you can also choose to do payments as was originally talked about with this interlocal agreement, that both Mr. DeJarnett for the city and Mr. Peck for the district have kind of came up with the language on this together and reviewed it. So that's kind of up to the board. I know that Darcy is sick this evening, but I know that she is interested in possibly making payments if the board is interested in doing so that she can keep things free, not knowing what's going to happen with the bond and everything else. And we found out today that we may need a middle school boiler, so that's fun. So some other things that stress all of us out that would help in that area. So as far as capital outlay dollars. So there are also some other items about operations with the city and the district and who will pay for what and other things. Obviously with the city running parks department anyway, for them to be able to take care of the areas and around the community center and all that when they're already taking care of the park only makes sense. It also mentions in there for the district paying for internet and security cameras and some things on our side of things that we would also keep updated in the building. So it's kind of a back and forth between the two entities. There is language in there about the superintendent and the city manager working together on any issues that come up. And then if for some reason those two people could not see eye to eye in the future, bringing in a third party to make the final decision on that. So there's different language throughout for you to review and ask any questions and move forward with that. So
Will the district have scheduling priority?
for events, yes, for school events, yeah. Yeah, that we would work around that. They're not gonna assign something, I mean, the city wouldn't, rent the facility out on a football game night or something like that, so that would be a mess.
And Martin looked over it and said the one issue with the payments is this takes care of it. That's the way that's wording.
With the interlocal, yeah, because it's an agreement from the city saying that we can do that.
Do you want to table it to next month when Pat and Sarah are back? Let's do that. Then we can all look at it.
There's no reason why the city needs it now.
Not that I'm aware
Now
of.
that we've,
No, and I want you guys to be comfortable anyway, it's an agreement, so.
I guess and find out when the first payment would be due.
Okay.
And how often.
I believe the answer to that is next fall.
Okay.
Is when the bonds are, start to be due for the city, I believe. From the meeting that we all met together, I believe it's sometime in the September, October in there, so but don't quote me on that.
Next fall, this coming fall, next fall 26.
Fall of, no, I think it's fall of 25.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think it makes good sense to make the payments.
Yeah.
That way we're not depleting our reserves, then we get a, oh, whoops.
Yeah. No, I agree.
We will bring it back next meeting.
Thank you.
Alright, first action item, republished in non-resident enrollment numbers.
Yes, we found a couple of things that we wanted to tweak. The board approved our non-resident enrollment number sheet to publish in December, and so we're just asking to replace with this. We found a couple of spots where we had some online students that weren't represented in the numbers, and so we changed those. And then we also wanted some verbiage that helped somebody on the website to read it a little bit better. Sometimes we get caught up in school business and think everybody who's looking at something is reading our minds. So wanted to put some language on there that helped our patrons make sense of it as they're reading it on the document. So just wanting to replace that if the board's comfortable.
Looking for a motion, you're all good with that?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion, can I get a second?
Second.
A second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, officers and committees.
Yes, it is January again, and so that means we discuss, or the board discusses officers and committees. So officers, the board appoints a president and a vice president. President obviously runs the meeting and has meetings with the superintendent on setting up the agenda. And then the vice president has typically been a part of those agenda meetings if they choose to. And then they also typically will step in for the president if the president is gone. That's been the main duties as far as this board is concerned in the past. And so that would be first order of business. Second order of business is how the board wants to run this calendar year as far as the extra work that is done. Committees are not required, but with the amount of work that needs to get done, typically our board has assigned committees so that different board members are doing different projects. With the purpose of all of that work, the whole purpose is to make a recommendation to the board, so it is not work that is independent of the board. It is being discussed, but then it should be reported back at board meetings for final decisions. So that's been the makeup in the past. This past year, the board ran a facilities committee, a policy committee, negotiations. There was a handbook committee that got added. There was a communications committee, and then it is in language in the negotiated agreement to have one board member on the calendar committee. And so I guess we also need discussion on committees and what committees we want, if we need to add any, if we need to subtract any, and then what membership would be on those committees. So there you go. There's a lot of information.
Alright, so we'll start with, I guess, president. First one.
I'd like to nominate Brandon Earl.
Thanks, Bob.
Ain't broke, don't fix it.
Alright. We got a motion, we got a second.
Are you willing?
Yeah, I'm willing.
Okay.
He called me out on it earlier.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, now we need vice president.
I nominate Jess.
Okay.
Nice second.
Alright,
Okay.
you alright with that?
Okay. I can work with you. I can be a thorn in your side.
Alright, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same. Now the committees. So Adam and I received an email that someone didn't want to do committees any longer on our board. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. We're all busy enough, and I don't want to micromanage everything under the sun on that. I understand where she came from, but I didn't want to bring it up that we did have one board member that didn't want to do it committees, so. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or.
No, I think the concern was the getting information back to the board, and so if there's anything that I can do as superintendent to help that, since I'm a part of all of that, if that's, I mean, that's on me at the end of the day. So if the board needs, the majority of the board needs more information than I'm providing, then I'm happy to set up whatever we need to make that happen. So that's never an intentional thing by any means. So
Maybe that's it. We just, in our board reports, we need to make sure that we're reporting on any meeting we had, right? I mean, I've been trying to do that because I know that it's been a concern for some. But I think that would be simple, or just sending some meeting notes to Adam to share.
Usually we do update.
Yeah. we've done
Yeah,
that
I mean, I
basic.
feel like usually,
We need to have the committees, because we've all got jobs, we've all got families. And I don't really need to be sitting down here waiting for somebody to come in and kiss my ring. So. Ring. I heard him say that on the nightly news. But, yeah, we've got enough to do, and none of us need to micromanage anything, period.
All good with that?
I'm great with committees,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the report is sharing,
I think it
delegate.
helps on the efficiency.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with the first one, the facility committee. I don't mind staying on that committee. I like it. It's kind of my backbone on what I do, so I'd like to stay on that one.
So with that, do you, that's came up a minute ago, do you guys want, because we're getting heavy into bond talks, do you want a separate facilities committee to deal with like boilers, what situation type things? Do you want a bond committee that's separate? Do you want that committee to do both?
My thought is they're already aware of the other issues in the district, so
If you have two, they're just.
streamlines it.
Keep it the same?
Okay.
Okay. Facilities committee it is.
That is one committee I've never served on, so I'd throw myself on that.
Okay.
12 years later.
Don't rush into anything there, Jason.
The other thing that should be brought up as far as membership, this has just been a discussion over the years. We have had years where the board has had 2 members. You can obviously have up to 3 because then you don't have a full board meeting. But I know that one year we did 3 on all of them. I know that some of the board felt concerns that year because they felt like because they only had these other 2 people that they couldn't talk to anybody from the board to weigh anything off of, they couldn't call a friend, basic phone a friend situation. So that's another thing that for the board to consider when you're thinking about 2 people, 3 people on a committee. So I have Brandon and Jason on facilities.
Policy committee, which I think Sarah said she'd love to stay. Was she on policy?
She said if you have a policy committee that she would like to stay on. So that's another topic. For the policy committee, we get KSB updates twice a year. One you got tonight, December and June. So that typically goes to the policy committee to go over those prior to the board. But that doesn't have to happen. It can come straight to the board if you so choose. And then also if there's specific projects that the board assigns that committee, like something comes up where some language needs to be developed or whatever, then you could always assign that to that committee if it's policy. Those are kind of the things that have been in the past anyway. So
who else is on that besides Sarah?
Andrea. What's your thoughts, Andrea, on the committee?
I'm fine with staying on it if no one else wants to.
You guys feel like you want that committee still?
Yeah.
Okay. So Sarah said she wanted to be on
Yeah.
it, so are you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll have to vote on all these here in a minute.
Negotiations with the next one.
Negotiations.
Bob wants to throw his head in?
Yeah.
Alright.
I can do that one.
Okay, Bob.
It's good fun.
Bob's gonna do negotiations.
I'm willing to do it again if you guys will have me, but that's only if the board thinks that it's okay. I get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I went back and forth on that one.
Okay,
We got 3 left, do we
let's
do
do
it again?
That's,
Just do the
that's
2?
up to you guys.
No, but I can stay too.
Last year was Jessica, Andre, and Pat.
No.
Actually kind of missed it.
I'm sure you do.
About that much.
So we're keeping that 2?
Yeah, we're gonna stay with 2.
Handbook committee,
So my recommendation to the board on handbook committee, I know we brought that up when we were working on something earlier this year, but I would shovel that through the policy committee if you're, instead of doing a separate.
I would agree.
Or just
Because
do it
most of that-
earlier. I think we could do what
Yeah.
we did, like, I thought it was good. I was on that one and I sat in on the first and I think it was great. Because as I've even learned on communications, a lot of those things are copy and pasted and it's not, like they do need to be reworked. But I think if we would just, we can get one on the books for next month even.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we've already gone over elementary, so how many, that just leaves really middle school and high school if we start early. I don't know if we need the committee so much.
Gotcha.
I think it could run through the board, and then if you wanna assign it to
Right.
committee, then you could.
Okay.
It's kind of hard on admin to, I mean, based off of what happened last year, I plan on getting it to you earlier anyway. But really, if admin can have time to revise those, get them to you with, I mean, they always put in what the changes are, so. I don't, it should be, if we get them to you a little bit earlier, so we have some more time, I think, at the board table, then that would be okay.
Okay.
If I would've known last year, I would've done it, so that was my fault. That's just a recommendation though.
I'm fine with that, if everyone else is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Communications, is that still,
I think give us one more year because we did have some ideas last year that we didn't, that it was in between Jen leaving and Chad coming that we didn't get to do. And hopefully we're gonna get a hold of that website soon. So I think, I think that it's gonna be a long-term thing? No, but I think one more year would.
so membership for that?
I'll do it again and I would suggest, I think Sarah wants to be a part of it, I don't know for certain. But I would make sure that we make her, give her the opportunity if she wants to.
So give Sarah the opportunity, if she wants to.
did Pat ever get back with you what she wanted to serve on?
She just mentioned in that one meeting that she was interested in negotiations, in the meeting you and I had, the agenda meeting you and I had, that was the only one that I remember. Yeah,
Okay.
she mentioned she wanted to be on negotiations. And then need one member definitely for calendar committee.
Well, I don't think Pat's on anything, so maybe we'll throw her around that one.
Yeah, she always plays on that pretty heavily anyways.
So Pat on calendar?
Yeah.
Okay, any committees that the board feels like are needed that you'd like to add for this year? Okay, now, and you can always add one later if you choose, but for now.
So do we make a motion on all these committees now? Do you want to do them individually or can we do it as a lump?
We could do them all for us if you want to read them all, or do you want me to read them all?
Yeah, go ahead.
For facilities, I have Brandon and Jason. For policy, I have Sarah and Andrea. For negotiations, I have Bob and Jessica. For communications, I have Jessica and give Sarah the opportunity if she's interested. And then for calendar, I have Pat.
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Admin reports.
Oh, go ahead. We do have KASB negotiation training in Hayesville on February 5th. If whoever's on negotiation, if you're interested in attending that,
I'll do that one.
let me know and I will get you signed
get
up
me signed up
tomorrow.
for-
I will sign you up tomorrow.
I'll do it.
Okay, that works, thank you.
Okay, I'll sign you up.
And I believe Darcy is signed up for that as well.
Okay,
So,
good deal.
so if you guys want to ride up with her or whatever, we can transport you up there.
Cool.
Russ, would you put me on there as well, just as a alternate? in case
Sure.
something comes
Great
up?
idea.
Yep.
Admin reports.
Admin reports. Hi, admin.
Happy to board.
Anybody
All's
wanna
good, we're.
Chat about anything in the reports or anything? Brag about your school?
I'm looking for one more spelling bee judge for this Friday. Anybody? Jess has already signed up, and Adam, I have 2 judges already. I'm thinking one more. If anybody is just looking for something to do Friday afternoon,
What time?
2 o'clock.
Okay,
You do it? All right. Here we go. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? They're quiet tonight.
Yeah.
It's a new year.
It's kind of a rough first day,
Yeah.
just getting back to
Oh,
the schedule.
God.
I'm
Right there with
We're not sure if we're
Is
coming
there
or
any
if
Yeah.
we're all the above.
Probably can't consider this. I hear an Arctic blast is coming this weekend.
That's what I
Sounds
hear
good.
too.
As long as it comes at night again, that's what I like.
All right, board member comments. Andrea, you want to start us off?
Oh, thank you for canceling school. Those are tough decisions, and I know that you probably get some negative feedback on that, but appreciate you taking everybody's safety into account on that.
You bet.
Nothing else?
I don't have anything either. I have none.
I wanted to thank our facilities group, Jeff Drive, is that what his name is? I took my new driver out to drive the high school parking lot thinking we hit some ice and it was so clear. It was great. I was like, all right. So they did a great job with what Mother Nature threw at them. So thank you very much, guys. It made it real safe for our students and families. December, we had some great concerts with our performing arts. So I just want to thank all of our vocal and our band teacher. They were great, and I can't wait for our spring program. So thanks, guys.
I've probably said enough already.
All right. Next up, executive session. For our non-elected personnel for 30 minutes to include Adam and Chad. We will resume at 8:04.
So moved.
Got a motion? Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same. Okay.
Entertainment I had out of $5 away.
Okay, we're back in open session. No, oh, like that.
No action was
No action was taken. Give me the consent agenda now, please.
Okay. Consent agenda. Approve the minutes of the December 9th meeting. Approve payroll and bills. Payroll, $1,228,120.96. Bills, $528,353.97. Transfers, sped 50,000, latchkey 8,000, and vocations 100,000. Personnel, approved new hires. Trevor Warnock, PE teacher, Eisenhower and Washington. Approved resignations. Anna McMinn, para for Lincoln. Dana Meeker, aide for the high school. Leah Stewart, PE teacher, Eisenhower and Washington. And Melody Reinhardt, cheer coach at the high school.
Okay, there's a consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And that's it. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your cookies.
You're getting there, man.